Alrighty, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to today's stream. It is Wednesday, August 28th, and it is 12:46 p.m. Central Standard Time. I am located here in Dallas, Texas. My name is Adam Hernandez, and I want to welcome you all to the stream today. We are going to be having a ton of fun, and we're going to be addressing some problems that a lot of people have when it comes to building speed on the guitar. And I want to show you how building a really good amount of speed on the guitar is actually much simpler than you think it is, and you don't need to necessarily learn a ton of complicated stuff in order to develop really good speed, really good technique. So if you happen to be watching the stream, make sure you drop a like on the stream. Helps it get out to more people. Make sure you leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Feel free to ask questions at any time during the stream as well. Those are always welcome. I want this to be a very interactive type of thing so that I can help you out in real time. That is the whole entire point of doing the stream. So with that being said, one more thing before we get into it. Just for today, the day of the stream, I am running a sale on the Jamsville GPS Fretboard Fundamentals course, my flagship course, which is basically to teach you the fundamentals of the guitar neck, being able to navigate any key fluidly, be able to play chords all over the neck in the best way possible so that you can master the guitar fretboard. So when it comes time to solo, comes time to play music in any key, you can very comfortably navigate your way around. So if you go ahead and click the pinned comment link, that you can get the coupon, which is Live 25, and you get 25% off the course. So for those of you who are interested in that, that is going to be available for today. And also, there's one more comment down there, be in the description, with the PDF for all of the exercises that we are going to be doing in today's lesson. So with that being said, make sure you hit that like button and let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that everybody needs to practice in order to develop really good speed is the simplest thing that you can possibly play in the guitar, if we just think about it logically. And what is that? It is alternate picking one note on one string. Okay, think about it. What could possibly be simpler or easier to play than that, right? If we start adding more notes and we start adding scale patterns and we start switching strings, there's all kinds of mechanical problems that can start to happen that we don't want to overwhelm ourselves with yet. And for those of you who might have heard me say this before, but for probably at least a year, every single day when I would warm up to practice, I would start off by playing with a metronome and literally just playing one note, okay? So I'm not gonna go into super depth like I would do with that, because I would spend sometimes almost an hour just playing one note, okay? Going and doing it in various ways, super duper slow, trying to pay attention to every single last detail of what was going on. We don't need to get that detailed right now, but you can start to improve upon your speed right now if you just do this one thing and start to practice picking one note with a metronome. So I'm going to go ahead and put a metronome on 80 beats per minute and try this. So here's going to be just one note, and I'm just going to pick a C note. You can pick whatever note you want, guys. You can change notes while you're doing this, whatever, take a break, change. So I'm playing 16th notes. So if you can't do that, that is 16th notes at 80 BPM, by the way. Well, how are you going to be able to play anything more complicated than that at that speed, right? So whatever given speed you want to play at, you must be able to do that first. And actually, it can be really fun seeing how fast you can do this. Like, let's see, I'm going to go up to 100. Let's see what happens and what it sounds like. 2, 3 E end up, 4 E end up. One tip, by the way, is try to accent each of those downbeats. So 1 E end up, 2 E end up, 3 E end up, 4 E end up. Just adding a little bit of extra oomph there. So what if I go to 120? See, I'm just very slowly but gradually ramping up. So right there, a lot of you might start to feel uncomfortable there, but if you don't feel uncomfortable, you can keep going. Let's go to 140. So this is starting to get pretty fast. This is where I want to make sure, actually, there I messed up a little bit right in the beginning. I want to make sure my pick is right there in the correct starting position, right next to the string, so that as soon as I move it, I get that first note. 1, 2, 3, and a 4 end. So for most of music, this is around the cap of where you're going to be asked to play. If you're really, really into, metal and shredding, you may be asked to play faster, but I'm going to go up to 150. That's a really good long-term goal, is if you can get this exercise of just playing one note, and you can also get all the other exercises we're going to cover here to be able to play them at 150 beats per minute with 16th notes, you've pretty much built up some high-level speed, okay? Maybe not absolutely mind-blowing and the most elite of the elite of the elite in the whole entire world, but it's extremely, extremely solid, and you're going to be able to play almost anything that you encounter if you can do these exercises at 150 beats per minute. So here would be one note on one string at 150 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, and a 4 and a... So it might take you a second to settle into it. And by the way, once you start getting really fast, here's a great technique to use before we move on to the next exercise is see if you can just try to play a burst. So the longer that you go on, the more it's going to tax the endurance of the muscles in your picking hand. So if you can just play a burst, let's say of one beat of 16th notes, one eanda, right? So 4 notes. If I can go 1, 2, 3, and a 4 and stay relaxed while you're doing it. Don't pick too hard. It's a good idea to try to mess with picking louder and softer, but you generally want to stay pretty relaxed. What if I do it loud? I will try it loud now. Right, so that burst technique is something that's going to start coming up more and more. It's an excellent, excellent way to start to get more of a handle over a tempo that you're maybe having issues with. Is don't try to just play this constant stream of notes right off the bat. See if you can play a short burst and continue extending it until you get more comfortable with that tempo and until you can actually play a straight up chain of notes. So now we're going to go ahead and change to the next exercise. Give me 1 second here. Hang on 1 second, guys. I got to. Okay, I'm going to have to fix something here real quick. This is why live streaming is sometimes a little bit nerve-wracking, and I will edit this out later. Let's see here. Oops. Cool, that closed. All right, hang on. All right, I think this should now work. Okay, cool. Let's see if I can fix this now. Whoops. Okay, here we go. So that was the first one. Okay, and it looks like we should be good now. Okay, so let's see if we can keep this running smoothly. All right, so next exercise. We are going to now start to actually change notes. Okay, so if you could pick one note and you can do that really fast, then that's great. Okay, so now we got to start with the next just slightly more complicated thing is practicing all these different combinations of switching between one note and another note. Because if we're playing a solo, if we're playing a scale pattern, all it is going to be repeating that action of switching from one note to the next note and so on and so forth, okay? So what I like to do is start off with alternate picking between two notes that are a whole step apart. So this is going to be exercise 2, and we're still only on one string. Why are we still only on one string? Because again, now we still don't have to deal with the issue of changing strings. This is one of the most difficult things to start to overcome is changing strings when we're learning how to alternate pick well. By the way, there's a whole YouTube channel out there that goes into even way more detail than I do when it comes to this topic of switching strings. Troy Grady, if you ever check out Troy Grady's channel, it's a fantastic channel. I mean, he has really dissected every single last subatomic particle of switching strings. But with that being said, it's still important to be able to play on one string these basic movements before we start to even remotely think about changing strings, okay? So we're going to do this exercise number 2 you see there, and we're going to alternate pick two notes that are a whole step apart. So I'm just going to pick C and D, which are right next to each other. And all these exercises, by the way, are going to stick to the key of C. If you know your fretboard really well, if you've taken the Jamsville GPS Fretboard Fundamentals course, which is 25% off during this stream with the coupon code LIVE25, pinned there in the chat, then you can feel free to adapt and modify these exercises to different keys, throw them over backing tracks, and do it in a very creative improvisational manner. Once I learned all these little exercises, that's what I like to do is actually start messing around with them and modifying them to the scale and so on and so forth. So let's try this exercise. So two notes that are a whole step apart. So Again, that's 80 beats per minute. Let's jump way up to 120 beats per minute. If I am practicing this for real and I wasn't streaming and I didn't want the stream to take like 6 hours long or something like that, I wouldn't just jump up from 80 to 120, especially not if I'm practicing 16th notes. The most I would ever go up by is 10 beats per minute. And a lot of times if I'm practicing something with 16th notes, I'm only going to go up in increments of 5 beats per minute. But I just want to demonstrate here, okay? So here's 120, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so what? By the way, one thing, when we are playing two notes that are right next to each other on the same string, you can just hold down the lower note. Okay, so I've seen people do this and they're like lifting these fingers both up all the time. No, that's not the way that guitar works. We don't need to do that. I can just have this finger here held down the entire time. So really, it's just a matter of me moving my pick on time and then actually bringing the second finger down and lifting it off at the time that needs to happen, okay? So let's see if I can try it all the way to 150. I'm scared of this without warming up properly, but let's go ahead and give it a try. 1, 2, 3, and a 4. So there, I'm gonna try a little burst. I need to settle into that tempo. It's very fast. Okay, so I'll get out while I'm ahead there. That wasn't too bad. So yeah, again, like it's very important to gradually go up. Start slow, go up in small increments. Once you have gotten to a pretty fast tempo, let's say yesterday or whatever, you're a more advanced player and you have gotten to a faster tempo before, you can go up in bigger increments just as a part of your warm-up, but if you're trying to crack through a speed that you've never hit before in your whole entire life or something like that, then you need to definitely go up super gradually, okay? So now we did two notes that are a whole step apart. Let's do the next variation of exercise 2, which is two notes a half step apart. By the way, if you notice, when I did the two notes that are a whole step apart, I was using my first and third finger. You can also do this with your second and fourth finger. I would never do two notes that are a whole step apart with two consecutive fingers. The idea is we don't want to have any unnecessary stretching. So now we're going to do two notes a half step apart. So we're going to start on this B note here and go to C and go back and forth like that, because we need to systematically go through all of the different combinations that we can find on one string, because then when we string together a scale pattern or a scale run, we are going to have basically addressed every single little Lego block that goes into building a scale. So I'm gonna go to 100 beats per minute, and for the sake of time, I'm not going to ramp up every single exercise from now on. I'm just gonna play it at 100, maybe another tempo, and then we're gonna move on because we still have a few more exercises to go, and we've already been going here for about 20 minutes. So let's keep it moving along. So two notes a half step apart. 1, 2, 3 E and a 4 E and a. So there was the first and second finger. I'll try the second and third finger. And now third and fourth finger. Want to do all those different finger combinations because we're going to encounter them later on. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next exercise. Well, it's not technically the next exercise. It is still more variations of the second one. Still two notes on one string. So now exercise 2C is going to be two notes that are 1.5 steps apart, aka a minor third. So 2 frets in between each of the notes. So in this case, we're going to go between B and D, which is the 4th fret and the 7th fret of the 3rd string. So let's go ahead and try that one out. And this one, I would only do with these two fingers, guys. First finger and fourth finger. It's gonna, yeah, it's too hard. I mean, I'm 6'4", by the way. I don't have small hands, and even that's ridiculously hard for me. The only exception to what I'm saying about these fingerings is if you decide that you want to go ahead and do it on a really, really high fret, like up here, for example, then yes, I can actually even throw out like all of the rules of the fingerings, because all the frets are so close together that it doesn't necessarily matter. But if we're playing more in the middle register of the guitar, okay, these fingerings are only practical ones. Again, and then finally, last variation of exercise 2 is going to be exercise 2D, which is two notes that are two whole steps apart, aka a major third apart. So we're going to be playing a C and an E. This is a very, very, very important one to get used to, because it can help us transition between positions. It can help us create really cool patterns. Like if I combine 2C and 2D, I can actually go up a major scale, like on one string. I could go. Right? You can make really, really cool patterns like that when you're actually soloing, okay? So again, if you actually know the fretboard really well, or at least just know the natural notes on the guitar neck, this is a really, really good way to practice your improvising too, at the same time as you working on your speed. So here's 100, here's exercise 2D. And just for fun here, let's jump all the way back up to 150. Let's say I can try it at 150. Not totally clean, but if I warmed up a little bit more, it might be a little bit easier. One more time. 3, 4. Okay, so yeah, there the tension's starting to build up a little bit. Again, if I was practicing this on my own, I would certainly be going from 100 to 110, 120, etc., and it would feel a lot more comfortable at that speed. Anyway, let's go ahead now, and we're going to move on to the next exercise, which is still gonna be on one string. You see all of the stuff that we can do on one string? I promise you we're gonna start changing strings, but if we can't do all this stuff on one string, guys, you're not gonna be able to do it on multiple strings. It's a whole extra layer of complication more to have your pick having to switch strings, okay? So now we're gonna do a 3-note scale fragment. What we're gonna do is we're actually gonna systematically go over all of the typical scale fragments that you will find in a major scale or a minor scale that occur on one string. So this is going to be the first one. We're going to have the 4th fret, 5th fret, and 7th fret. And again, I don't want to move my hand left and right, so I'm going to use the 1st, 2nd, and 4th fingers. And I'm just going to go 1, E, and So I'm going up and back down. And again, I'm still alternate picking everything. And I'm going to work on that. Right? Until I can get that to start feeling really fast. So now we're involving more fingers. Now we're having to involve 3 fingers in the mix. And now we're starting to get closer to what you're going to start seeing in more shreddy sequences and things like that you might find. So let's try this 100 BPM. By the way, feel free to take any of these and basically put them in reverse order. So instead of like 4, 5, 7, 5, start with the pinky instead. So 7, 5, 4, 5, like this. It just kind of relates to the metronome in a different way, and it creates even more variation. So that's going to be our first scale fragment. Now let's go to the next scale fragment, which is going to be almost the same, but it's a slightly different fingering. So now we're actually going to start here on the 7th fret. We're going to go 7, 9, 10, 9. And those of you who are astute, you might notice that's kind of like the first 3 notes of a minor scale. So it's D, E, F, E. And the fingering is almost the same. It has the same width to it, okay? It's 4 frets wide, but now we're going first finger, third finger, fourth finger, not first, second, fourth. First, third, fourth. This is, again, one of the little one-string patterns you're going to find all the time when you're running through a scale or running through any sort of shred sequence that you find. So let's give this a shot. Okay, let's try it at 150 just for fun so you can hear it a lot faster. Okay, so that's 150. Again, don't do what I just did. Don't go straight up to 150. If you ever want to try and you feel like 150 is way out of your range, try a little burst. Maybe see if you can just go. Those bursts can really help you control the tension that builds up when we're trying to repeat stuff over and over and over and over. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next one, moving right along. Exercise 3C. This is going to be the last 3-note scale fragment that we're really ever going to see when we're playing through any scale pattern that we find on the guitar. And this one is the one that's going to have a little bit of a stretch to it. So if you were working on the previous exercise in number 2, this major third stretchy one here that was 2 notes, then you'll have a easier time, not a harder time, you'll have an easier time with this 3-note pattern. So we're going to go 5, 7, 9, 7 and go back and forth. So that's kind of like the first 3 notes in a major scale pattern, okay? So, but a lot of times, by the way, the first 3 notes in a major scale pattern you'll see later only has 2 notes on the first string and then switches. But this is very common to see too, and it can really help us facilitate creating patterns, which I'll show you in just a second. So here's that one at 100 BPM. Cool. Let's try 150 just for fun. And then we're going to, I want to show you really quick how you can sort of combine some of those exercises there. So here's 150. Let's give it a shot. A couple of flubs right there at the end. Okay, cool. There we go. This is such a good test for me to not build up my tension. I have to stay relaxed, and I know you guys are watching me in real time, and I can't cut anything out, so that definitely adds to it a little bit. So I think that I get better from doing these lessons as well, and I hope that you guys are getting value out of it too. So anyway, with that being said, we're about to move to finally changing some strings, okay? But one thing is, again, if you've picked up the Jamsville GPS Fretboard Fundamentals course, which is 25% off for this stream today only, if you click the link that's in the chat or go on the website and type in the code LIVE25, you get 25% off, then you can start to take some of these patterns, throw on a metronome or throw on a backtrack or something, whatever you want that's in the key that you picked. I'm going to stay in the key of C, and then I can actually sort of improvise a little bit with some of these exercises. Like if I take that first 3-note pattern that we used earlier, and then the second one, and then the third one. All of those are going to allow you to play up any string and make sequences like that. You can. I messed that one up. Right, so you can actually improvise around and simultaneously work on your speed. Now, of course, you run the risk of making some mistakes. That's okay. That's sort of the whole idea. Actually, if you're making some mistakes and you're improvising, to me, I think that that's a good thing because that means you're playing something that's challenging you. If you're improvising and you never make like one single mistake, of course, you'd be extremely good and all that stuff, but you're not really challenging yourself, right? If you're really, really challenging yourself and taking risks while you're trying to play around with something, well, then you're bound to make a mistake because you're gonna try to go for something that's outside of your current ability. And you should always be trying to stretch your current abilities, okay? So with that being said, yay, we're finally going to move off of just doing one string. Let's go ahead and fix this here real quick. There we go. I need a little bit more space there. Okay, so now we're going to finally change strings and we're going to play what I like to call 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 major scale pattern. So we're going to play here on the 5th and 7th fret of the 3rd strings, sort of like just those 2 notes that we worked on earlier. Remember that? We just worked on the 2 notes. Well, there you go. Now that exact same pattern is being placed into a more complicated thing. So we're going to have the 5th and the 7th fret, and then we're going to switch strings to the 2nd string, and we're going to go 5, 6, 8. So really that's the pattern. And if you're familiar with the key of C, it's C, D, E, F, G, okay? So we're just gonna basically do that, and then we're gonna come back down. So now we have one string skip. Or not a string skip, rather, a string transition. A string skip is if we're actually skipping over a string that's next to the string that we were just playing on. So let's actually analyze that. And later on, there's going to be something that I call supplemental exercises that will help you if you're having some problems with the exercises that we're going to be continuing to work on from this moment on that will assist with the string transitions, okay? So fundamentally, we have to work on this part. Switching to that 2nd string. So down, up, down. We are switching strings on a downstroke, okay? So down, up, switch with a down, up, down. And then we're staying in the same string, up, down. And then we have to switch with an upstroke back to the 3rd string, and then we do it down and we're back at the beginning. So let's see what that sounds like at 100. By the way, of course, if this is way too fast for you, then just play them as 8th notes. So any of this stuff that we're playing as 16th notes, you can always just convert it into 8th notes. So instead of 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and just play it as 8th notes. Just go. And speed up, speed up, speed up until you can play a slow tempo with 16th notes. Just a general thing I like to do is if I have to play something with 8th notes, I'll play it with 8th notes until I get to around 130 or 140. And then at that point, I'll cut the metronome back to 70 and I'll play with 16th notes. Because as you know, with 8th notes, if we're playing 8th notes at 140, that is literally the exact same speed as playing 16th notes at 70 beats per minute. Okay, so, and then vice versa, by the way, if you're playing 8th notes at 140, that would be like playing quarter notes at 280. That's the way that rhythm works. So I would just work my way up with eighth notes and then at some point cut down to 16th notes. Sometimes if you can't play 16th notes, like let's say it's 60 or 70, it can be challenging rhythmically to try to play 16th notes at like 40 BPM or something like that, because the metronome is so slow that now it's introducing another challenge, which can be good for our time, but we're trying to focus on building our speed and technique, not necessarily our rhythm, even though this will help our rhythm. So practice that, because now we're getting a little taste of switching strings, okay? Now, exercise 4B, we're going to add the rest of the scale after that. So here we just went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we came back down. Now, that exercise that's there on the right, 4B, is going to be a whole entire octave major scale. So we're going to go 5, 7, switch, 5, 6, 8 on the second string, and then 5, 7, 8 on the first string. So as you can see, by the way, that 5, 6, 8, that was the first little 3-note snippet in the exercise we did before. So remember we played that over here? That's why we did all this stuff, because now we're changing strings and we're just basically combining those little 1-string snippets that we're working on, but now we're combining them all in a row while switching strings, okay? So we have this, and then now finally, we ended, we have to switch on an upstroke now. So we played, the last note was a down on the second string. We have to go around the string and play an upstroke. And then down and then up, okay? So that was another one of those snippets. See if you can remember which one. It was the third one. We did it over here, but starting from the 7th fret. The first finger, third finger, and the fourth finger. That's why we worked on all this stuff on one string, because now when we go crossing strings and we're playing these scale patterns, well, guess what? We are not seeing anything new. We've already seen it all. We're just combining the stuff that we've already seen in different ways, okay? So let's see if you can try that. We're gonna go up and down that 1 octave major scale pattern. So you should be able to do that. And by the way, if you can't do that, just try to see if you can go all the way up. So, by the way, that's going to be the next thing that we're going to do, I believe. So let's go to the next exercise here. Is going to be up only. That's right. So, but not quite in the way that I was just doing it. So I took a little break in between. But now what I want you to do is see if you can skip all the way down to the bottom. So let's see if I can try that with the metronome at 100 BPM. 2, 3, 4. So that one starts to get a little bit more challenging, because now there is a string skip, because I have to skip all the way from that top note down to the bottom note. So I go up on the first string, and then I got to skip all the way down to the third string. So now we're getting a little bit of string skipping action in there. By the way, if I was having a lot of trouble with this, which I'm not even going to try this one at 150, because this one's definitely going to be a lot tougher at 150, and I need to gradually ramp up before I'd start to feel really comfortable with it. I would actually just go ahead and like play the first note of the next repetition. What do I mean by that? I'll show you. So if you can get back to that first note, you should be able to continue on and play the whole entire rest of the scale pattern again. And also, by the way, it really helps if you can start looking at your right hand while you do this to make sure that you're keeping the alternate picking steady, okay? If you're trying to do this fast and you're messing up the alternate picking, you need to slow down. Okay, you cannot do this if there's any question whatsoever about the alternate picking, okay? So now we're gonna try actually the opposite. So we're gonna start from the top and go down and then go back up to the top. Let's see if I can do that one. I messed up the first time. There we go. So again, these exercises are simple. Are they easy? No, they're not always easy, especially once you start getting north of 100 beats per minute even. A lot of people consider 100 beats per minute to be a milestone tempo, because really that's like eighth notes at 200, but we're playing 16th notes at 100. So I'm going to keep saying this over and over because I'm just trying to demonstrate the stuff in the video. If I was practicing this, I would start around 80, 90, 100, and you would start to feel a lot better at a given tempo. Okay, let me try that one more time just because that was kind of embarrassing. There we go. That was better. It still wasn't perfect, but there you go. So I probably need to work on this one a little bit more just because I feel comfortable going up and down a scale, but that string skip that happens there, we're going to go all the way back to the top, that starts to throw a monkey wrench in things. And again, no matter how good you get at guitar, by the way, guys, these are always good things to work on. Like, you can never work on these things too much, okay? You'll always come back to them, and no matter how long you've been playing for, how good you get, it's always good to have the mindset of trying to be better than you were, never being totally satisfied with your guitar playing. Okay, so with that being said, once you've gotten that down, now you're finally ready to start doing full-blown position patterns. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. And I'm going to go ahead and start off at 80 just because this is going to be a lot more complicated. So those of you who are familiar with the 5 major scale patterns, okay, that's basically what we're going to do is we're just going to play through one of them right now, okay? If you are familiar with the 5 major scale patterns, you should go ahead and go through all of them like this so that you can get even more variation and so on and so forth. But if you can get through this one, you should be able to get through any of them, okay? So now we're going to start our C major scale all the way down here on the 8th fret. So we're going to go 8, 10 on the 6th string, then 7, 8, 10 on the 5th, then 7, 9, 10 on the 4th. Again, look, there's that pattern from before. All the same patterns that we saw earlier. And then we're going to go 7, 9, 10 again on the 3rd string, 8, 10 on the 2nd string, 7, 8, 10 on the 1st string. So, and then there we're at the top, and then we just go backwards and do the whole thing in reverse. So let's try this one at 80 beats per minute first, and then this one we will ramp up and see how fast I can get. So. Dumb mistake there. There we go. That was a clean one. One more. There we go. Okay, so that's 80. Let's see if we can try 100. One more time. So this is where the endurance starts to come more in, right? Because I have to be able to maintain that. That's 2 basically full entire measures of 16th notes that you have to be able to get through, okay? And you have to deal with all those string transitions and all of that. I would, at this point, I would go up more gradually, actually. Let's try 110. So by the way, also, if I'm really practicing this and I'm just practicing my own and I'm not streaming, I would play it at least 5 to 6 times perfectly before I even move up the tempo, okay? I only did it like twice there, so let's try this. 2, 3, 4. See, I'm already making a mistake because I didn't play it enough times at that previous tempo. Let's try it one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. 3, 4. Okay, so there you go. Even just doing that, okay, that is like starting to get pretty tough there at that 110 BPM. 110 BPM with 16th notes tempo there. So that's definitely something that after I get off of here, I'm gonna work on that a little bit more. See if we can get that up to 120 or 130. So you see though how earlier I was able to play those little things. I was able to play those things a lot faster, right? So it's when we start adding more notes and having it go longer and longer and longer and have more and more string transitions, that's where your speed really gets tested. And that's why you need to simplify things before you start this. See, a lot of people, when they want to learn how to build their speed, they just start right here. And that's the problem, is that you can't really start right there because it's just too complicated and people are thinking too much about the alternate picking. They're thinking about trying to remember the whole entire scale pattern. But if you go in those exercises we did previously to this one, you don't have to tax like your memory so much. You don't have to worry about as many different things. We can just worry about moving the pick fast, moving it in time, and moving our fingers faster and in time. So with that being said, this is something, by the way, if I was going to play it faster, even faster than this, I would definitely start using hammer-ons and pull-offs. So we're not even going to talk about hammer-ons and pull-offs today. That'll be another lesson. This is more focused on purely alternate picking. Hammer-ons and pull-offs can let you play even faster without being as stressful, okay? But learning your alternate picking is super duper important for that. Anyway, so now let's check out the last couple of exercises here, which will help you with some of the other ones if you're having any problems. So, supplemental exercise 1 is kind of like a little portion of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pattern that we did earlier. The thing is that if you were working on just these one string things that we're doing before, well, now that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pattern is introducing the string skip. So what supplemental exercise number 1 does is pretty much isolates that the string transition. I keep saying string skip. The string transition, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna play 5, 7, and then 5 on the second string. That's it. And you should be able to do that a lot faster than even just playing the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pattern. Like, let's say let's try doing that 120. 1, 2, 3, and a 4 and and you have a little rest in between. And then you can start to work back in that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pattern. Right? But doing that exercise there, supplemental exercise number 1, it'll get you to the next string. You're practicing just getting to the next string. Practicing what does that feel like when my hand moves from the third string to the second string. So supplemental exercise number 2 is like taking that full octave major scale pattern that we practiced before and practicing, well, this was included in it, so we already covered that. We're covering the next string transition. So we're playing all the notes that were on the second string, and then ending with an upstroke on the 5th fret of the 1st string. Why? Because that's the transition we have to play in that scale fragment. So it's teaching us how to get to that next string specifically with an upstroke. By the way, when we're playing these scale patterns too, it can be really useful to not necessarily think of every single last pick stroke that we're making, but think of the first direction when we change strings. So if I know, hey, when I get to the 2nd string, the first one should be a downstroke. And then when I get to the 1st string, the first one should be an upstroke. Then my hand's just going to keep alternating from there. Okay? It's not going to be... It's very unlikely that it's going to do a whole bunch of downs in a row or something like that. So if I know I'm just alternating, I just need to make sure that I hit the right pick stroke first when I change strings, okay? So let's try that exercise, supplemental exercise number 2. 3E and a 4E. Kind of dragged on one of those there. Notice how there's a break in between. Burst technique, right? So you can make that break longer if you want. To really relax in between each repetition. It's kind of like doing sprints on a track, right? You want to make sure you recover in between. If you feel fatigued in between, fatigue building up, then you want to take a longer break, right? And then you can go back to trying to play through that whole scale pattern. And then you can mess it up the first time. There you go. So when you do those supplemental exercises, it helps you to really iron out some of the annoying transitions that you get when you're playing through a scale pattern. And then finally, the last 2 things that we're going to go over here, supplemental exercise 3. So this even further helps to iron out the string transition motion. Okay, we're going to go ahead and slow this one down a little bit because this one's going to be a little bit more difficult. So now, literally all we're practicing is the string transition. So we're playing the 7th fret of the 3rd string and going to the 5th fret of the 2nd string. So we're gonna, actually, if you notice, there's a 16th rest first. Okay, so the reason for this is because we want our alternate picking to actually line up with the rhythmic subdivision. Okay, so if I'm counting like the first exercise we did, just picking one note, 1 E and 2 E and if I do that really slow, look at my pick and notice what I'm saying when I'm counting. 1 E and So every E and my pick is moving upwards. 1 E and So if you actually have seen my other video that's called the Ultimate Guitar Rhythm Exercise, that's something that we use for playing rhythms actually. So if I'm playing a rhythm like with a metronome, let's say I want to play only E's and U's, E, 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 I would actually play that with all upstrokes, like, or if I was gonna play E and I'd play up, down, up, down, up. So we're applying that same idea. We want to keep the pick direction going with the gravity of the actual time and the rhythmic subdivision that's going on. So that's why if I'm starting with an up pick, I want to make sure I'm starting on an E or an up. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start on that E there. So we're going to go 1 E and a 2 E and a 3. So I'm starting right after the metronome hits with that upstroke. This is, it feels pretty good at this speed, but let's say if I try to do it at 120. I can kind of do it, but I'm starting to get stressed out here. I would again want to gradually work my way up. But if you practice just those string transitions and just going back and forth, now every single pick is hitting on a different string. That's going to get you way better at transitioning strings. And speaking along those lines, supplemental exercise 4 is the same thing, but now we're starting with a downstroke. And we're going to the next string with an upstroke. So down on the second, up on the first. Down on the second, up on the first. And we're going to do that. And again, these are just the string transitions that we saw from playing our 1 octave major scale pattern that we saw earlier. So let's try that one. Let's bring this down a little bit. Here's 100 BPM. 2, 3, 4. So that's, I mean, it's, I think no matter how much I practice this stuff, guys, too, it's always like, you just still gotta warm up, and it's almost you can never do enough. You know, the string transitions is one of the hardest parts actually about playing guitar. Like, I'll just be honest right now, like, that's one thing that I'm jealous of other instruments. They don't have to worry about this stuff. Like, a piano player, like, does not have to worry about, like, oh, like, changing strings and stuff with this whole other mechanism that has to be used. Like, you just hit the key and you're gonna hear the sound, you know? Like, with us, it's like, if I hit the note with my left hand, no, it's not good enough. I still have to hit it with my pick too. And it has to be hit at the exact same time. But such is life, and we just gotta put up with it, and we can't complain about it. We just gotta practice it. But it is definitely kind of a pain in the butt. Let's try it at 120. So this is definitely something that if I do that for a while, I feel that tension start to build up. So I got to do it in bursts. And also, you got to try to make sure that your pick's not like bouncing too much like this. So like a rainbow, right? You got to try to keep it like as flat as possible, but it's still not possible to keep it like perfectly flat because you have to go around that string, right? And I'm aware that there's people who are advocates of economy picking and stuff. That's something that I've worked on before. And it definitely helps, and I'll definitely cover it in another video. But I'm of the personal opinion that I think you should practice all this stuff, at least a little bit. You should be able to alternate pick, and then maybe once you get to a point where you're playing so fast that alternate picking just simply becomes unnecessarily hard, and it's way easier to play something if it's economy picked, well then economy pick it, right? So I think that most people use some kind of blend of these different techniques. I don't think I've heard anybody who like, oh my God, only economy picks or only alternate picks. I'm sure there's some people, most of the really good guitar players that I've met though, they use some kind of combination. Sometimes they're alternate picking stuff. Sometimes they're economy picking stuff. Sometimes they're using legato, hammer-ons and pull-offs, and so on and so forth. But this is a systematic way to get your alternate picking together, which to me, no matter what, is going to be the foundation, at least to a certain point, of being able to build other speed. I haven't really seen anybody who knows how to play legato really well who like can't alternate pick through a scale at 100 beats per minute or something like that, or vice versa, like somebody who can destroy economy picking but can't alternate pick through a scale, you know, at a reasonably fast tempo, right? Not anything earth-shattering, but reasonably fast so that we can build a solid base of technique. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure that you check out the Jamsville GPS Fretboard Fundamentals course if you want to learn how to master the guitar fretboard and be able to navigate in all keys and be able to find chords all over the guitar fretboard, all the things that you need to know to be able to deal with any key that you ever encounter. And make sure you check out my music also in the description down below. I got a couple songs on Spotify. Make sure you check those out. Also, make sure you head on over to the Jamsville merch store. Get yourself a Jamsville t-shirt, just like this one. Also, link in the description. You can get the PDF with all of the exercises all in one convenient place that we just covered in this video so that you can go ahead and systematically practice every single one of them on your own, which, as you can see, is going to take a little bit to be able to get through each one of them and get them to a really, really fast speed. All right, everybody, until next time, listen, learn, and